Another Universal monster movie. You know my tradition with these by now. I saw this with my dad, and before we went to see it, we watched the original from 1941, and I thought it was pretty cool. I actually love the prosthetics and makeup in it. The design is classic. But now we got a new one. Again, it's been about 15 years since the last one. How does this one measure up? Wolfman. Arr! So Wolfman is a retelling of the story of the Wolfman, kinda sorta. It's directed by Leigh Whannell, the director of The Invisible Man from 2020, which I loved. So I had some expectations for this one, man. I was like, alright, Leigh Whannell is kind of bringing back the Universal monsters, making them scary again, you know? So this retelling stars Christopher Abbott as Blake. He and his wife and his daughter, they go up to his dad's old house in Oregon, in the middle of a forest, like in the middle of nowhere. Always a bad sign. And long story short, Blake gets infected by something, a wolf creature of some kind, and now he's losing himself to this transformation into a wolf-like creature himself, and his wife and daughter have to survive. Now, I'll be honest, I don't find myself as attached to the Wolfman as I do to other classic Universal monsters, like Frankenstein and Dracula, but you know, this is like the classic man becomes a monster and loses his mind kind of story. It's like the Hulk if he were a little more bloodthirsty. Or actually, if I'm comparing this to Marvel, I should probably say Werewolf by Night. You get it. And I'll say the acting in this film I thought was actually pretty good. Christopher Abbott, man, this guy's just hurting throughout the entire thing. You can tell he's sad and he's just scared of what he's becoming. He doesn't want to harm his family. He loves them. He even tells his daughter, he's like, my job is to protect you.
It's my job to protect you.
But he's starting to lose it, and it's not his fault. It's just bad luck, man. Which then we have Julia Garner as his wife, Charlotte. I liked her a lot, too. I haven't seen her in a whole lot. I know she was in that show Ozark, but I haven't watched it. And I know she's gonna be in the new Fantastic Four movie coming out this year as a Silver Surfer, which, you know, that's cool. But yeah, she is good in this movie, because she plays a couple of different kinds of scared. The kind where she's just freaking out and screaming in hysteria, but more effectively, the kind where she's frozen in fear and tearing up. That I actually thought was pretty cool. And the daughter, her name's Ginger in the movie. This kid was okay. Not the best child actress I've ever seen, but certainly not terrible. In fact, that more or less describes my feelings towards this entire movie. Not the best monster movie I've seen, but not the worst either. I like the fact that, like any good monster movie, they spend a lot of time teasing the monster. We don't see him for a good chunk of the film, but then when we eventually do see him, I thought the makeup and prosthetics were pretty good. I mean, this isn't my favorite Wolfman design I've ever seen, I'll be honest. In fact, now that I think about it, apart from a couple of things, there wasn't really much that was wolf-like about this design. Yeah, it was kind of strange. I'll tell you what was awesome in this movie, that was the sound. Not only was it jacked the fuck up, so you could hear every snap, crackle, and pop, but the surround sound was great too. I just noticed, like, when someone was supposed to be over here and to your right, like behind you, the sound came from over there. The auditorium speakers, it might just be that, but it was mixed really well. I gotta give all sorts of props to that. It was probably one of the best aspects of the movie. The sound design, it was great. And there were some visual effects, like CG stuff, that was pretty neat. Like, you know that scene in the trailer where it shows his wife and she's talking, and then it pans over to his point of view, and her speech becomes kind of garbled? There's something visually that happens there too, and it happens a few times in the movie, where it shows what he sees as he's mutating. I thought that was actually a really cool effect. It adds to the immersion in that you believe that he is changing into something else. I thought that was really cool. He's not just changing in appearance and strength, but he's gaining the senses of a wolf as well, and that would be terrifying. I never thought about that before. That's really neat. This movie also has some pretty gross visuals too. Like, there's a scene where he's eating the meat from his own arm. Both me and my dad, who never does this by the way, but we were both shielding our eyes from it. I've never seen my dad shield his eyes from a movie before, but there we were both just like, ugh, oh my god. And the sound effects, again, you hear the it was so gross. Like, why, Leigh Whannell? Why'd you have to do that? I don't know, but it was effective, I'll say that much. One of my biggest complaints about this movie, though, is the lighting, or lack thereof. In a literal sense, this is probably one of the darkest movies I've ever seen, or at least one of the darkest I've seen in a while. And I get that it was done this way on purpose, but come on. This is actually something I've noticed that people have been complaining about online for a while now. It's like that scene from the last season of Game of Thrones, where it was just so dark, people were complaining about it. That rings true here in Wolfman. I mean, I could still keep up with it. I could still see what I was supposed to see, but I don't know, just for some reason in this movie, it bothered me. My biggest gripe about this movie, though, is the fact that it doesn't really get too deep. I mean, we're talking about a man who is losing his mind before the very eyes of his family. He is changing into a monster, and he's losing his humanity. Let's take the psychological deep dive into that, you know? That's one reason I love The Invisible Man, because it was messing with her mind, and it took that dive into Cece's character. Wolfman, unfortunately, doesn't really do the same thing. It focuses more on the horror, scary aspect of it, which, alright, fine, I guess. There were some scenes that were were pretty suspenseful, although a lot of times the movie did choose to opt for the cheap jump scares as well. So it's just another monster movie with jump scares like all the rest, because there are hundreds of those out there. It doesn't really dive into the lore behind this wolf thing that he's becoming. I mean, yeah, sure, it does give a reason for it, but that's all it gives. It doesn't give the backstory behind that reason or why, like, I'm trying to be vague here. It didn't give me enough, that's what I'm saying. It was unfulfilling, and that let me down. And the movie's kind of slow paced too. And I'm not asking for a monster movie to be fast paced and exciting. No, it goes for that grind, and I get that, but there is such a thing as the grind being too slow in a monster movie. I felt this one moved along at a bit too slow of a pace. I'll be honest, I checked my watch a few times throughout this movie, and that's never a good sign. I will give this movie one final praise though, its musical score. And it's funny, like throughout the movie, I was like, this sounds like a Benjamin Wallfisch score. I didn't actually know who it was, but sure enough, when the credits came on, I saw his name, I was like, I knew it. Yeah, I could tell it was him, that piano that he likes to use. It goes for the more dramatic tone rather than horror, which kind of clashes with what's going on in the movie at times. But what can I say? The music is really good. But in the end, Wolfman, I was hoping it would be great because I had faith because of the director, and I want to give it credit where it's due. The sound, the score, the makeup, the on-location shooting and cinematography as well. They were all really good. But when it all comes down to it, arguably the most important part of a movie is the story and writing. You can have a movie be beautifully shot but still have a terrible script. That's happened a million times, and this is kind of another one. I mean, the script isn't terrible, but it's not great either. It just kind of is. All in all, the good and the bad, they balance out for me. For Wolfman, I will say, wait until this movie's at a matinee price, then go see it. Alright, so Wolfman, have you seen it yet? What are your thoughts on it? And what's your favorite iteration of the Wolfman that you've seen? Or werewolf story in general? Gotta admit, the transformation scene in An American Werewolf in London, best werewolf transformation scene ever. Scared the fuck out of me as a kid. Whatever you think, go ahead and leave a comment. And of course, thank you for subscribing. Peace!